thank you guys. We're back again, this time with Pastor Cecil Blye Jr., senior pastor at More Grace, and also just an absolutely wonderful, godly man. We're going to talk a little bit about fatherhood and also talk a little bit about abortion in the Black community and fatherhood exactly. But Pastor, could you just give us some of your general views on fathers and fatherhood?
Well, I believe that the number one societal issue is the absence of a father in the home. Every indicator, every study, all research shows just glaringly that when there's a dad in the home or a dad involved with the children, if he's not in the home, then those children do better educationally. There's less incidence of getting involved in crime. They are more likely to have good, strong families when they get of age. As far as emotionally, and all the indicators, a dad in the home makes a huge difference. If the dad's not in the home, a dad that is heavily involved with his children makes a huge difference across the board. And so we need to have dads involved with their children, and even in situations where they're not, because of systemic reasons, because of court issues and whatnot, because they're not allowed to be a part of the child's life for whatever reason. They need to do what they can to make every effort to be a part of the child's life anyway. And then also in the Black community, over 70% of the Black families in America are headed by females. The dad's just gone, okay? And that has destructive consequences for the reasons I just articulated. As far as every indicator shows that when a dad is in the home involved with his kids, that those kids excel and do well. When he's not, then they don't. And so God's way is the best way. God intended for the mom and the dad to raise those children. And so we need to target men, and we need to train them from an early age and mentor them in regards to looking to the future, preparing for fatherhood, being a good dad, and even in situations where the ball is already on the court. In other words, things have already happened where the dad is not able to be a part of that child's life. There are things that can be done because, first of all, nothing's impossible with God. The Bible says in Proverbs 21:1 that the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and he moves that heart anywhere he wants. But if the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, then the queen's heart is certainly in the hand of the Lord. If the queen and the king's heart's in the hand of the Lord, then the prince and the princesses and common folk, in other words, he started with the king because he's saying everybody's heart is in the hand of the Lord. And God, he says he moves it like a water course. And so that dad can begin to pray, pray that there will be a release, that child will be able to be a part of their life again. And that mom, okay, if there's any tension, that the Lord will tear down those barriers and begin to pray and believe God that he can be involved with his kids again. And the Lord will move. And so there's nothing impossible with God, but we have to do something to initiate, strategize, and press forward, intentionally saying, I'm going to pour into my child's life.
There's nothing you can add to that. Brother, you had just returned from a pro-life
rally at the local Planned Parenthood. Yeah.
And just before we started taping, you had mentioned that a lot of times those types of centers are located in low income.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood targets minority communities. There is actually a genocide, and I'm not exaggerating. There's a genocide happening in the Black community where we are 11% of the population, and we have 40% of the abortions. And the number one killer of Black men and Black women, number one killer of Black people is abortion. Not only is it the number one killer, when we add all the other reasons up together, you're talking about diabetes, cancer, drive-by shootings, Black on Black crime, white on Black crime, whatever. You add them all up together, and there's more abortions performed than all of those. It's the number one killer of all the other reasons put together. The most dangerous place for a Black man in America is not Missouri or Watts or New York City or Baltimore, Maryland, where they had the riots. The number one, the most dangerous place for a Black man in America is his mother's womb. Mm-hmm. And so what we need to do is begin to articulate and to have people understand that life is precious. The civil rights movement. We were somewhat of an epicenter for the civil rights movement because Dr. Martin Luther King's brother, A.D. King, pastored a church here. And then when we had the public accommodations law passed in Frankfurt, and other civil rights legislation passed. It was resisted in Frankfurt, but Dr. King came here. He marched with his brother A.D. King, and so it was passed, and it had national significance as far as other areas passing public accommodations laws. Well, A.D. King's daughter, Alveda King, she is having she is spearheading a movement for civil rights for the unborn, and she's going around the country saying, my dad and my uncle Martin, they never would have been in favor of the destruction of people in the womb. And she's going around saying the number one killer among black people is abortion. But it's not just for black people; it's for everybody. But the point being is that if you're going to make our statement and be trustworthy, and you say Black Lives Matter, they got to matter in the womb too. And so we need to understand all lives matter, but we need to also understand that there's a genocide going on in the black community where we are actually having a negative birth rate. In fact, in New York for several years has had a negative birth rate where there's more black babies killed through abortion than are being born in New York.
Wow. And let's relate this to fatherhood. I noticed I had a friend of mine. Well, I know of a situation where a young black man, he got this black woman pregnant out of wedlock. And she said, well, I don't want to have the child. That's my decision. And he tried to persuade her not to have the abortion. He's trying to persuade her to have the child. Now, of course, he was in no financial position to support her or that child at that time. But it fast forward 15, 20 years later, he still talks about that experience. And it's almost as if he's mourning it. Because he would say things to me like, this is around the time I lost my daughter.
Yes.
And he would say things like, man, if she had lived, she would have been doing this at this time.
Right.
Right. And I said to him, I said, man, why didn't you fight? And he said, he basically said to me, I didn't realize how important it was.
Yes.
I said, what was important? And he just said, well, me being a father.
Right.
He didn't, I don't know if you could sort of.
Yes, there's so many people, female and male, who have post-abortion, issues, post-abortion syndrome, where they miss, having that child, they miss observing the birthdays, they miss seeing the child grow, and it hits them. And also when they get educated, when they hear that child, that person in the womb, that it actually has an identity, it's a person, it's not just a blob of tissue. No respected medical expert, no respected doctor, nobody who's respectable in the medical field would dare say that life does not start at conception anymore. I mean, that was something people used to say, back in the 1970s. But, even the Supreme Court, when they ruled to allow abortion in the more recent abortion cases, they admit life begins at conception. We're not going to argue that. Okay. There's been too much testimony, too many experts testifying before courts. Everybody knows that life begins at conception. The issue is, are you going to let the mother's right to her body trump the child's right to life? Okay. And that's even being taken at extreme, so that even with babies that survive abortion, now they're being left to die. And this legislation being passed by states and also by the federal government, this proposed legislation which passed, that if a child survives abortion, then you need to give them food and hydration and let them live. But there are dads who are suffering very much because of realizing that I killed my baby, I killed my child, and I didn't do anything to stop. I didn't request, that the mom, not to have that abortion. I didn't support the mom and say, listen, I'm in here with you, and even if we don't make it ourselves in our relationship, this child's going to make it, because I'm going to make sure financially, I'm going to make sure that time-wise, giving up myself, that I'm going to help you with this child. And a mother can feel so alone. She can feel like, I don't even like this guy anymore. We're not even dating anymore. And, so I'm going to get rid of this baby because this baby's going to remind me of him. But that dad needs to say, you know what? Even if you don't like me, okay, let's like each other enough to work to save this child, and I will be there with you. In other words, there needs to be a ministry to people who have a crisis pregnancy, and an education process for dads to let them know, that child is worth saving. That's a human being, and you have support, and people need a support system. Our church is out there on the sidewalks at the abortion clinic. We've saved in the past, say, 3 years, we've saved over 400 babies, where the mom and dad had gone in there saying we're going to have an abortion, but we were street counseling, and yelling through the windows. And over 400 babies are walking around Louisville today that would have been aborted. And then in my own congregation, a number of babies would have been aborted that are walking around, singing in the children's choir and whatnot because I preached it from the pulpit. And so we need to articulate that that person inside you is a living human being, and that you're going to regret if you kill that baby, because you're going to have every Christmas, you're going to be thinking about, well, I didn't, I could have had gifts under the tree for my kid, but they're not here. You don't know when the kid's birthday would have been, but you'll be thinking about birthdays you missed. And so,
Father's Days.
Yeah, Father's Days. So it's very, very important to look at this and reach out to men and educate them, because what happens is people think of it as birth control. They think of abortion as birth control because they're not educated. But once you educate them, then they say, you know what, this is a life in the womb, and we need to preserve that life.
Brother, how can people reach you?
They can reach me at 100 West Ormsby Avenue in downtown Louisville, More Grace Ministries in Old Louisville.
And your services, do you have a website?
Well, we do. Our services are at 10 a.m. on Sundays, then 7 p.m. on Sundays, and 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. Actually, we have services basically every day, but those are 3 services.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
All right.
Today, man.
All right.
Thank you.